an investigation into a series of brutal murders, all connected by black magic and a hidden mastermind. The film opens by introducing two detectives, Rebecca and Smith, who are assigned to investigate a mysterious death case. They are directed to an old factory that has long been abandoned and is no longer in operation. In the basement of the building, they discover the body of a man in a horrific condition. The victim's body is almost unrecognizable, reduced mostly to bones, surrounded by maggots and a strong, nauseating stench. Based on the initial investigation, the man is believed to have died around 5 to 6 weeks before being discovered by Femi, the factory's guard, who found the body by chance while patrolling the abandoned site. What makes the case even more disturbing are the strange symbols found around the crime scene. On the walls and the floor beneath the body, there are markings resembling satanic symbols. There's also a series of numbers that appear to be dates, although no one has yet been able to determine their meaning or connection to the case. The forensic team accompanying the investigators immediately begins a preliminary examination and prepares for an autopsy to determine the exact cause of death. From the initial observations, there is suspicion that several of the victim's internal organs were deliberately removed for unknown reasons. Hearing this explanation, Rebecca and Smith recall a similar case they handled not long ago, in which a man was found dead with his heart missing. At that crime scene, there were also satanic symbols and a series of numbers resembling dates, and the perpetrator has still not been identified. Although there is no solid evidence yet, the similarities in the deaths lead them to suspect that both cases were committed by the same person.
Cruder than the first one. The other one?
Forensics.
Leptospirosis. Yeah, 5 or 6 weeks.
The dates on the wall.
They then gather in a meeting room with two other detectives, Perkins and Lawrence, to discuss the possible connection between the cases. The meeting is led by John, the head of the investigation team, who is known for his experience in handling complex cases. During the discussion, they highlight the similarities between the two victims. The first victim was found in the basement of an old building, while the second was found in the basement of a long-abandoned factory. Both suffered similar injuries and were believed to have been killed using medical instruments. The identical symbols found at both crime scenes further strengthen the suspicion that the cases are linked. However, to confirm this, they must wait for the autopsy results of the second victim. While waiting for the results, John orders Rebecca and Smith to find out who had access to the abandoned factory.
We really need Laurel and Hardy here getting in the way of the investigation.
Find out who had access to the building.
Their investigation begins by interviewing Femi, the man who first reported the discovery of the body to the authorities. Femi is the factory's guard, and since the factory officially shut down several years earlier, he had been assigned by his supervisor, Tony, to monitor the exterior of the factory to prevent unauthorized entry. However, on the day the body was discovered, Femi admits that he heard strange noises coming from inside the factory during his routine patrol. Driven by curiosity, he decided to break his usual routine and enter the building. That was when he discovered the decomposing body. Rebecca and Smith ask Femi who else, besides himself, had access to the factory. Femi explains that aside from him, Tony is the only other person with access to the building. Without wasting any time, Rebecca and Smith head straight to meet Tony. They find him at his office, where he is shocked to hear that the factory he manages has become the site of a corpse discovery. During the questioning, Rebecca and Smith ask several questions, including why there were no surveillance cameras installed in the factory area, even though it is large and vulnerable to trespassers. Tony explains that the decision was not his to make, as he only serves as a manager with limited authority, including the responsibility of appointing Femi as the factory guard. The owner of the factory is a man named Michael, who currently works as a manager at a private company. Since the factory stopped operating several years ago, Michael has been unwilling to spend additional money on facilities such as surveillance cameras, arguing that the place is no longer in use. Tony also admits that he rarely visits the site and has no knowledge of any suspicious activity inside the factory. He is genuinely shocked to hear that a murder has taken place there and emphasizes that all security matters and decisions regarding facilities are entirely under Michael's authority. If Rebecca and Smith want a more detailed explanation about those decisions, then Michael is the person they need to meet. Hearing this, Rebecca and Smith immediately go to meet Michael, the factory's owner. When they speak with him, Michael appears confused upon learning that his factory has become the site where a body was discovered. Rebecca and Smith promptly request access to visitor records or any list of individuals who may have entered the factory over the past few months, hoping there might be traces that could lead them to new clues. However, Michael's statement surprises them. As the owner, Michael claims that he has never once visited the factory since officially becoming its owner. The only time he ever went there was during the purchase transaction. All technical matters, management, and security have been fully entrusted to Tony. The case now becomes even more confusing. If Michael never comes to the factory and Tony is rarely there, then who has actually been going in and out of the factory all this time without anyone knowing? With no meaningful leads yet, they decide to return to their respective homes while waiting for further developments. However, the very next day, another horrific tragedy occurs at the same factory. A third victim is found dead in a gruesome condition with his eyeballs gouged out, and he is believed to have died from severe blood loss. Just like the previous cases, strange symbols once again appear on the walls and floor around the body, along with a series of numbers resembling dates, deepening the unresolved mystery. The first person to report this discovery is Tony. This fact significantly heightens Rebecca and Smith's suspicion toward him. 2 victims have now been found in the same place, a location accessible to only a few people, including Tony. Previously, Tony claimed that he rarely visited the factory, so why is he now the one reporting the discovery of the body? They immediately interrogate Tony seriously, trying to uncover whether he is hiding something. However, Tony stands by his statement and insists that he has no involvement in the murders. He claims that he came to the factory that morning to conduct a routine check following the previous murder. Although Tony's explanation sounds reasonable, suspicion still remains. Without clear evidence, they cannot name Tony as a suspect. If Tony were truly involved in the murder, his fingerprints would surely be found near the victim's body or on objects directly connected to the crime. Not wanting to waste time, Rebecca and Smith return to Michael to dig deeper for information.
Coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous.
Instead of helping, the interrogation quickly becomes tense. Rather than giving clear answers, Michael appears to belittle the case they are handling. He responds to their questions in a dismissive tone with careless answers. He even arrogantly states that the factory is just one of many neglected properties he owns. According to him, losing 1 or 2 old buildings is nothing worth making a fuss about, let alone something that should take up his valuable time. Michael's arrogant attitude makes Rebecca increasingly furious. To her, someone who shows no empathy toward the deaths of 3 people is clearly suspicious.
So who's playing the good cop and who's playing the bad cop? Do you know how many derelict sites like Kingley Street I own? Many hours of overtime. It's an active construction site. Will have...
After leaving Michael's place, Rebecca stops briefly at a pharmacy to buy medication. Since working on the case, she has been suffering from severe anxiety attacks and has been relying on tranquilizers to cope. She hands her prescription to the pharmacist, hoping to get the medicine quickly, but her attempt is halted when the pharmacist informs her that the prescription has expired. New regulations require the prescription to be renewed directly by the treating doctor. With her schedule growing more hectic and the pressure of an unresolved case weighing heavily on her, Rebecca is forced to make time to return to the clinic. She knows that if she does not renew the prescription soon, her anxiety could worsen and interfere with her focus on the investigation.
I would just like to get this prescription.
After finally obtaining the medication from her doctor, she returns home physically exhausted and mentally drained. After taking the medicine, Rebecca decides to go to bed early. However, she suddenly dreams of being visited by Michael, the man who has made her uneasy since the beginning of the investigation. The next morning, Smith arrives early to pick her up. During the drive, Rebecca shares an idea to secretly follow Michael, as her instincts tell her that he is hiding something. Smith agrees, and they begin quietly observing Michael's activities. They see Michael leave his apartment and drive toward his old factory, the very place he claimed he had never visited. This immediately raises serious questions. From a distance, they watch Michael take a large bag from his car and carry it into the factory. The contents of the bag are unclear, but his behavior is undeniably suspicious. Rebecca and Smith plan to follow Michael further into the factory area, but their plan is suddenly interrupted by a call from the office. one of their colleagues reports that another murder has occurred. This time, a man is found dead in a tunnel not far from the city center. Rebecca and Smith immediately turn around and head to the crime scene. Upon arrival, they find the body of a man with deep wounds on his back. The forensic team confirms that the victim died from massive blood loss. Preliminary examination reveals that one of the victim's kidneys was forcibly removed. In addition, there is evidence at the scene in the form of an intact candle with a store label still attached to the bottom. At first, Rebecca continues to suspect Michael as the mastermind behind the murder, but Smith tries to view the situation from another angle. He reminds her that they have been following Michael since morning and personally witnessed that he only went to his factory without doing anything overtly suspicious, while the fourth murder took place at a completely different location. If Michael were the killer, how could he be in two places at the same time? Although she still harbors doubts, Rebecca eventually agrees to follow the lead from the store label on the candle.
Oh, he's getting cocky.
But I'm not going to waste taxpayers' money on
I don't like rats, okay? I'm sorry.
evidence.
Together with Smith, she goes to the address listed. It turns out the shop sells various occult and magical items, and it may serve as a clue to uncovering the person behind the murders.
This is not what I expected a voodoo shop to look like.
What can you tell us about this? Do you have a customer database?
Still suspicious of Michael, Rebecca tries searching for his name in the store's customer purchase records, carefully examining each entry. After a long search, she finds no record of Michael's name in the list. There is no evidence that he has ever set foot in the shop. Even so, Rebecca remains convinced that Michael could have used a fake name or sent someone else to buy the items for him. Smith begins to feel that Rebecca is becoming too fixated on one person who has not been proven guilty. He advises her not to focus her suspicion on Michael without truly solid evidence, warning that concentrating on a single suspect could cause them to miss other important clues. Feeling that she no longer has Smith's full support, Rebecca decides to continue her surveillance on her own. She starts secretly following Michael again, but the effort does not go smoothly. The anxiety that has been haunting her resurfaces and begins to impair her ability to think clearly. Each time she tells Michael she is plagued by hallucinations that make it difficult to distinguish reality from imagination. Eventually, her condition forces her to visit her doctor once more, this time not only to renew her prescription but also to seriously consult about her worsening mental state. The doctor prescribes a new medication with a higher dosage and strongly warns Rebecca to completely avoid alcohol during the treatment, as it could worsen her condition. Although she is not fully recovered, Rebecca resumes her surveillance of Michael. When she sees him leaving his apartment, a reckless idea suddenly crosses her mind. Seeing it as a golden opportunity, Rebecca decides to break into Michael's apartment. Inside, she moves cautiously, searching room by room. From what she can observe, nothing seems particularly suspicious until she comes across a large wardrobe secured with a heavy steel padlock. Before she can attempt to open it, her phone rings. It is Smith, calling to inform her that the murderer has turned himself in at the police station. The person who claims to be behind all the murders is none other than Tony. Tony confesses that he is the one who killed all the victims in the case they have been investigating. However, his confession feels strange when he is asked about his motive. Tony is unable to provide a logical explanation. He only says that his mind becomes chaotic every time he commits a murder, as if an evil force takes control of his thoughts and drives him to act brutally beyond his own control. The overwhelming guilt eventually pushes him to turn himself in. Tony believes he has lost his sanity and considers himself no longer mentally sound. To him, surrendering is the only way to put an end to everything.
Have you killed anyone else?
Coffee? No, I don't want a fucking coffee! It must have driven me to it.
After the interrogation session ends, those observing from behind the one-way mirror are still unsure whether Tony is truly the real killer. Amid their debate and doubt, a shocking incident occurs. Tony, who appears calm just moments earlier, suddenly takes a desperate action and ends his own life using a sharp object he had with him.
This guy's connected, he's on the list.
Ambulance now!
Several days after the incident, John, Rebecca, Smith, Perkins, Lawrence, and the rest of the team hold a small party to celebrate, believing that the murder case that had plagued the city for weeks has finally been resolved. However, this is not how Rebecca feels. To her, everything seems wrong. She remains convinced that Tony is not the real culprit. There is something about Michael that continues to trouble her mind. As the party goes on, the hallucinations that have long haunted her return once again. Rebecca sees the figure of Michael walking toward her with a threatening stare. Unable to distinguish between reality and illusion, Rebecca grabs a glass bottle nearby and impulsively strikes the figure she believes to be Michael. When she comes to her senses, she realizes that the person she hit is not Michael, but Smith. The incident changes everything. Smith is rushed to the hospital, and their colleagues begin to distance themselves from Rebecca. They no longer see her as a reliable detective, but as someone who cannot control her own mind. As a result of the incident, Rebecca ultimately decides to take an extended leave. Although no official decision has been made, it is highly likely that her career as a detective will not continue due to the frequent hallucinations she experiences. She undergoes various tranquilizer treatments and therapies, but none of them bring any significant improvement.
Last up to 30 minutes.
That night, while reading the newspaper, Rebecca notices a photo of Michael accompanied by an article stating that he will be conducting another property transaction that very evening. This opportunity is something Rebecca cannot afford to miss, as she sees it as her final chance to prove her suspicions about Michael. Her memory immediately returns to the last time she broke into Michael's apartment, when she discovered a large wardrobe tightly secured with a steel padlock. The unanswered curiosity now drives her to return, convinced that the wardrobe holds something that can explain all her confusion. As soon as she sees Michael leave the apartment building, Rebecca sneaks into his apartment for the second time. After locating the wardrobe, she immediately breaks the padlock and opens it. To her shock, the contents inside are all related to black magic practices. Among those items, Rebecca's eyes are drawn to a photograph of herself. She realizes that her mental disturbances were not merely caused by work pressure or ordinary stress, but by black magic cast by Michael. Panicked and terrified, Rebecca quickly tries to call Smith, but only reaches his voicemail. Without hesitation, she leaves a voice message telling him that she has broken into Michael's apartment and found evidence in the form of occult objects. Rebecca is convinced that Michael is a Satanist and the true murderer they have been searching for all along. Just after she finishes leaving the message, Michael suddenly appears and strikes Rebecca on the head, knocking her unconscious. When Rebecca opens her eyes, she finds herself in a hospital. Standing before her is the figure of her father, watching over her, which shocks and confuses her. Her father, whom she has rarely seen due to his demanding job and high position, immediately makes her suspicious. She begins to feel that what she is experiencing is not reality, but an illusion. Struggling to break free from it, Rebecca tries to leave her bed, but her father forcefully stops her. Her resistance grows stronger until she finally becomes fully aware.
This isn't real.
Don't.
Her vision clears and she now sees Michael standing in front of her, wearing surgical attire. Michael admits that he is indeed the perpetrator behind all the murders. He reveals that Tony was merely a pawn in his game. Michael deliberately cast black magic on Tony, causing Tony's mind to become chaotic. In an unconscious state and under the influence of dark forces, Tony carried out the fourth murder. Even Tony's decision to turn himself into the police was part of Michael's will. The series of numbers that appeared as symbols at each crime scene were not written by Michael. They originated from a demon that used biblical verses to strengthen its power in spreading terror. Now, Rebecca is the final sacrifice Michael has long prepared. Holding a scalpel, he declares that Rebecca's tongue will be the offering, believing that this sacrifice will fulfill the last requirement needed to make the demon submit to him.
It was him. He needs your tongue.
After sacrificing so many lives, Michael then demands the demon obey him, insisting on repayment for all the offerings he has made in exchange for the power he has always desired. However, Michael's greed provokes the demon's wrath as it refuses to submit to a human. The demon releases a thunderous voice that both Michael and Rebecca can clearly hear, ordering Michael to step out of the salt circle. The salt circle, forming a satanic symbol, turns out to be a form of protection. Hearing the command, Rebecca acts quickly. She secretly grabs a syringe and injects Michael's leg, forcing him out of the salt circle. The moment Michael leaves the circle, the demon immediately kills him.
You know exactly what I want.
What will you take? Okay, I respect you. You don't know what you've done!
Meanwhile, Rebecca, who briefly loses consciousness, suddenly wakes up in the hospital. Standing before her are Smith and their colleagues, who look both proud and remorseful for having doubted Rebecca and not trusting her instincts earlier. Still struggling to distinguish reality from illusion and unable to speak, Rebecca uses a piece of paper to ask whether everything is truly real. Smith responds by pinching her hand, assuring her that she is fully conscious and truly back in the real world. With a sense of relief, Rebecca and her team finally breathe a long sigh, realizing that the murder case that had haunted them for so long has finally come to an end, and the story concludes.